if you could describe ham radio in one sentence, how would you describe it?
Ham radio is a communication and technology hobby.
Mm-hmm.
That's really it.
Hello, everyone. Today we have on a very special guest, Mr. Cam Coble. He is the president of the N4NRV Amateur Radio Club and is a 10-year, is that right, amateur radio operator?
Since 2014, yes.
2014. So yeah, around 10 years. The first question, when did you first hear about amateur radio?
I tell you, I probably heard about it pretty early on. I had a neighbor that was back in the probably late 80s. His name's Roger, N4FPA, and he was a neighbor, and I got to talk to him a little bit, and he had some stuff in the backyard, and he would sometimes talk to me, and he was a talker anyway. So, yeah, he would like to talk and tell me a little bit about what he was doing. At that time, there was a requirement to do Morse code, so I really didn't want to have to study into that, but I always thought it was really cool. Yeah. So especially when he was able to make phone calls from his truck. Back then that was pretty neat to be able to do without having a cell phone.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever attempt to learn Morse code at that age?
No, maybe as a part of like some Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts badge or something like that, maybe, but nothing real serious.
Okay. So you kind of put it on the back burner until fairly recently.
Yeah. I've always been, kind of into electronics and things like that from way early on. So it was kind of a natural, I guess, progression, if you will. Just one of my personality traits is anything I get into pretty deeply. I do like amateur astronomy, firearms, electronics, and now into amateur radio, and just, it's. I think I had probably electronic kits since I was probably around 9. Had a soldering iron probably just a little bit after that, and I did play around a little bit with CBs back in the late 80s and early 90s. That was a lot of fun because then those electronics were really easy to modify, and you could do fun things like mess with your neighbors when they're playing with remote control cars. So anything I've ever done, I've never really built anything from scratch much. It's mainly hacking things that were already there.
How much experience did you have with CB?
I really just I just played around with it. I remember playing around with it in my dad's car. I must have been maybe 12 or so, and I always thought that was kind of neat. But I always, just really didn't want to put any money into it. But hey, somebody gave me a 23-channel Royce CB one time, and I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. And I found a CB repair manual in a yard sale one time, and used the applications in there to modify the CB that I was playing around with, and actually made it so that I could mix the channels so that I didn't just have the 23 channels. I had 40 plus channels.
Wow. Okay.
And it was, it's just one of those things that you get into a little bit, and you find that you can just learn more and more.
Yeah. From my understanding, CB was pretty popular around 30, 20 years ago, and since has kind of died down and only truckers use it. Is that accurate?
Yeah, nowadays I kind of, you hear about what they call the Super Bowl. It's really just kind of a competition to see who can stomp on who. Those guys are just, it's obviously illegal how much power they're running. But I hear of competitions that they'll have like cars right next to each other, and they'll have someone far out from them, and whoever can overdrive the other one is the winner. And, they're pushing like 10,000 plus watts out of a car. Right. And it's ridiculous when you look at it.
Can't be safe.
Yeah, it's definitely not safe, but those guys are having a lot of fun with it. As long as they're not interfering with anything, to me, it's not a big deal, but I'm sure the FCC has a different spin.
Actually, no, a couple amateur radio operators who got their start in CB, they liked just messing around with it. They would listen. Eventually, they got in all the conversations, and because of sporadic propagation conditions, they would start to get DX stations, and that fascinated them. So then they got their amateur radio license so that they could do that legally and at higher power with more availability.
Right. And quite honestly, I think, let's see, I had my CB set up in my Volkswagen Bug. It was a 70s Bug. This is probably around 92. And I had a 102-inch whip on the back. That was the CB
Wow.
antenna, and it looked like a remote control car. So, but I remember
Yeah.
sitting on top of the mountain and actually talking Skip down into down into Mexico. I thought that was kind of neat. And
Wow.
at that time, I really wasn't, I was just playing around with it, so it wasn't that serious. I did have other people coming to me with some of their stuff, and I fixed a few little things here and there. But I really didn't get into it
Yeah.
very much. I actually went into the military right after that, so all my time was devoted to saluting and doing marches.
Was your job in the military at all related to radio?
No, tangent. I mean, a little bit maybe because I was driving trucks.
Yeah.
So we had
Okay. Yeah.
sometimes we would have radios.
You had radios. Yeah.
Yeah, it was mainly just truck driving, jet fuel from place to place, and that was pretty boring. So got out of there pretty early.
Thank you for your service. But
Oh.
yeah. So you mentioned you got your license in 2014. What inspired you to get back into it? Get back into radio?
Well, quite honestly, if you look around on Amazon, anybody that starts looking for ham radio, um, I
Mm-hmm.
found the Bofang UV5R, which
Yep.
is
It's
a
a
lot of people
quintessential
either like
beginner
it
one.
or don't. It's
Yeah.
kind of hit or miss with some people. But hey, for $25, I was able to get a radio, play around with it, and I thought, hey, this is kind of neat.
Yep.
Matter of fact, I even got an RTL SDR as well. So it's like a little dongle. So you get a little dongle, and you can listen to other frequencies and look at on spectrum display, and
Mm-hmm.
just play around and see what's out there. And I got really interested in it. For $25, it's a pretty small
Yeah.
investment to start off with, and it really piqued my interest. And yeah, in 2014, I passed my tech and general at the same time. So had HF
Okay.
privileges, but really wasn't able to use them because hey, I only had a $25 Bofang. But really started looking into it. Going to field day from a local club. I was really stoked, even though it seemed like not many people talked to me. But I was really interested in that. Went ahead and got my extra, and as
Mm-hmm.
kind of I guess, an incentive to myself, if I got my extra, I was just going to go ahead and get an HF radio. So started off with a used radio. It was around $250 off of eBay, and just kept on going from there.
What drew you to HF?
Um, I think just because it's something else. When you're playing around with
Right. Yeah.
VHF, UHF, it tends to be more localized. So you're only really talking to people either a few miles away from you, or making use of a repeater network that either has, maybe covers 50 miles, maybe 25 miles on each side of a tower, or if they're tied in together, you'll have multiple spots. But that's nice, and it's nice for locals to be able to talk to each other. But I wasn't really interested in it for the communication aspect of it, for just talking to people around me. I wanted to reach out and
Mm-hmm.
see who all I can get in contact with. So my first HF contact was with that radio, and I put a 20-meter dipole. I made that out of speaker wire, put that in the backyard,
Mm-hmm.
and talked to somebody from California for my first contact. I
Yeah.
could not believe
Wow.
it. So,
That's an amazing.
uh, yeah, at the time it was KM4 AML, so Kilo Mike 4 Alpha Mike Lima.
You
That
still
was my
remember?
call
How
sign.
many watts were you running?
It was, yeah, it was capable of 100 watts, but I think I was only maybe pushing 80 watts at the time. But
Okay.
since then, I've
So
played around with.
still a lot.
Oh yeah, yeah. I have played around with QRP, which is reduced
Mhm.
wattage, so you're
Low
typically
power.
only doing like 5 watts. And from a park over when we were camping one time here locally in Virginia, I was able
Mhm.
to reach Asiatic Russia on 5 watts.
Really?
So
Was that sideband?
single sideband. Yep, I was actually
Wow.
talking with someone over 5 watts with a tree thrown up into a tree. Um, so I always like to try to kind of relate it to people that
Yeah.
aren't familiar with ham radio to say, okay, so if you can imagine what I'm actually doing, if you have one of those older flashlights with the filament type bulbs with the
Hmm.
big flashlights, big batteries, and you turn that thing on, you think, oh man, this thing's going to be bright, and it's just really dim. Well, that's usually a
Hmm.
5 watt light bulb. So
Right.
with
Yeah.
that much power, they're actually hearing me on the other side of the world. So if you can imagine being able to see a 5 watt light bulb all the way across the world, and matter of fact, you're bouncing off the atmosphere as kind of like a mirror.
Hmm.
That's what we're talking about. To me, that's it's truly amazing and still magical in my eyes.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's a lot of fun. You mentioned Club Day and that inspiring you to pass your extra and then get an HF radio. When did you get involved with the club?
Um, I think it was right after I got my first license. I started talking to people, and I think I joined up around 2016. So that was 2 years
Hmm.
after I got my license. Um, and really, it was just I needed to have other people to talk to.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of questions I had, especially at
Yeah.
that time, and I really needed an outlet or somebody to go to. And after I think it was around 2016.
Hmm.
Um, Started getting real involved with the club, trying to do things, and of course, uh, you know, younger ham. I've got all kinds of ideas. No one's told me that we can't do things, so um,
Hmm.
they kind of
Yeah.
like my attitude, I guess, and became vice president in
Mm.
2018. So I
Wow.
actually
That was
knew
quick.
the yeah. Well, I knew the club president, and just through family. So he was actually, I think he was a
Mm.
scout
Okay.
under my great grandfather, or not just my grandfather.
Mm.
So that was kind of neat.
Okay. Wow.
So we kind of knew each other's families, so that was neat. But after that, they seemed to take on liking my ideas as vice president, and he was ready to step down, and they voted me in as president in 2020.
Well, congratulations. How did COVID impact your club activities? Because that's around that time.
Uh, it was terrible. Um, that
Yeah, I bet.
was, for something, you have to kind of keep it in perspective. I think clubs right now are, it's just really hard to justify taking time away from families and things like that. There's so many other competitions for our time that having a
Hmm.
club where people have to go physically is a little bit daunting in this day and age. So
Yeah.
um, there's still a lot of people in our ham club. We're ham radio operators in the large are a lot of older folk, and they're kind of used
Hmm.
to having that club spirit and coming together and things like that. But when COVID hit, we're not able to get together physically, and now I'm having to walk a lot of people through. Even though hams are pretty tech savvy, you
Yeah.
still have to kind of walk people through the use of computers, which
Hmm.
most of them are probably 5 years old at least that
Hmm.
these people are using, and you're walking them through trying to get onto a virtual presence.
Right.
It was very rough. It was hard to reach out to people. We tried to do a couple of different things. One was we had the virtual presence, plus we try to keep communication through our repeaters as well. So it was
Yeah,
kind of
during
a
the
hybrid
events.
meeting. That was really hard to do.
Yeah, I bet.
And you really had to be aware. So I was basically acting as club president for the meetings at the same time being a net control, which is the one
Mm,
that controls all the communication that's happening online
right.
or over the repeaters. And trying to take
On the
votes and
repeat.
things like that was rough.
Yeah.
Um, and the field day activity, that's another one that we get together for. And our
Mhm.
first
Cool.
one, I said, hey, we're going to do it for whoever wants to come out. We're just going to try to take, precautions. A lot of
Mhm.
people didn't really understand uh, about COVID. It was all new and everybody's wearing masks. And if you're anything short of a bubble boy, you're trying to infect somebody else. But yeah, we took precautions. We put everybody had to wear masks. We had wipe downs for the equipment and stuff like that, and we didn't bring any food. One thing about ham
Yeah.
radio operators, we love to eat,
So we love the
and
food.
that that really
Yeah.
hurt. The atmosphere.
Yeah.
But it was outdoors. That was one advantage. It is during the
Yeah.
summertime, so that was another thing too. But we managed to. I think that year, that our contacts were definitely down for that year and the following year.
Mm.
But after that, it's starting to pick back up. So we're real happy with that. But yeah, that was a challenging time, and especially being a new club
Yeah.
president, and I'm sitting there trying to make uh, changes because um, you know one of the things that I was really trying to do as club president, um, I wanted to continue building the club, but into a group with a culture of learning about technology, old and new. I don't
Mm.
care what technology is. I love the old stuff because it helps us with the new.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I want to build it around that culture of learning and communications based around amateur radio. And
Yeah.
so I guess my short term goal was I wanted to have club owned equipment for all of our events. And right now
Mhm.
we're about 90% complete of that. So the club has a
Yeah.
lot of equipment. It's nice that we don't have to beg, borrow, and cheat to try to put something together to have an event. We have all club owned equipment. It's all serviced. We all know everything's that goes wrong with it, and everyone knows how to put it together. If not, I have directions on how to do it in the box. So
Yeah.
we accomplished that with club dues, sales, and donations. So that was real nice. So we're happy to have that.
Yeah, it was great. A couple of weeks ago, I attended one of your events. It was a fox hunt, and for those listeners who don't know, it's where you hide a transmitter in a park or some location, and people have to try to find it. So you hid three transmitters, and me, along with some other members of your club, had came and we used a specialized antenna called a Yagi. It's highly directional, and we would aim it in different directions and try to listen where the transmitter was. And after a couple minutes, we had found it. And everything we used that day was club owned, which I thought was amazing that you have all that equipment and resources to be able to put on an event like that without any cost for the club members. And I'm not even a member, and you still were more than happy to have me, and it was great. We stuck around afterwards and had a pretty good conversation.
Yeah, that was great, and I tell you, Ethan, you really took up to it. So
Yeah, thank you.
it was really nice to watch, and and that's one of the things that really drives me, and just I guess what a lot of people don't understand is so the way I see the club president role is I'm not there for other people to to tell other people what to do. I'm there to
Hmm.
serve other people. I want to do things so that I can share this passion for this hobby that I have with other people. And one of the ways I like to do it is through teaching and training people on how to
Hmm.
use it. So that's the whole thing. Now we have equipment. We need to train people how to use it, and
Hmm.
so they don't have to learn on their own, or they don't have to
Correct.
buy the equipment, or they might be able to find out, hey, you know what, that thing I read about in the magazine, that's just not going to work for me. That
Hmm.
we have that all the time. So, and that's where I think that clubs have kind of lost their sight for what they're supposed to do. and people have forgotten how nice it is to physically gather around common interests.
Yeah.
And like I was saying before, our society is so much on the go that even if we get younger folk interested in the hobby, they're going to have less time to spend with it, especially when they start having kids and
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. So, and that won't stop till their kids are grown. So
Mm-hmm.
we've got to recognize that as clubs now and provide activities that show value to people through their life cycle. Like I think things like the fox hunt are really nice. It doesn't take a lot of time. You can get out there, find out if you like it, and it puts things in people's hands, and
Mm-hmm.
also allows them to learn. Kind of step out of your comfort zone a little bit. But we really need to. I've really struggled with it, but I'm still working on it. But we need to be relevant to all these the young, the families, and the retired folk, all the same, and be able to see them all grow in the club.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a hard thing to achieve, but I think your club is doing a great job at it. Another resource that I would like to point out, something that I've used a lot, is your how-tos and educational resources on the N4NRV website. You've written several of them. I think you've written every single one that I've read, and I
Yeah.
just went through and learned. You've did a lot of work on them. I went through and learned a lot about electronics, some of the digital stuff, antennas, satellites. You have really good articles, and I think they're a great resource that more people need to know about it.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I do put some time into that. These days, unless you have
Hmm.
something on a YouTube channel, it's not going to get much exposure. But what I'm seeing though is
Yeah.
that some articles, in particular, my article about the what was it, the J pole antenna build.
Yeah. Yes.
Lots. You would not believe how many hits we get on that, and
Yeah. It's a good one.
that's I didn't think much of it, but I just kind of put it up there. But it's getting hard, one, to communicate by written text, because it's a lot of people just don't want to read it unless it's in a scroll feed somewhere,
Mhm.
and then it better be
Right.
with some really good pictures, or it's not going to be able. But so I am still trying to pull some of that. I would love to do some more YouTube type content, but that's
Mhm.
just not in the cards for me right now. I'd love to have somebody in the club just kind of start rolling with that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And that I think the ARRL, if you're not, if people aren't familiar with that, American Radio Relay League, that's
Mhm.
the largest club in the United States. They're the ones that kind of go out there and make sure we still have frequencies to use with amateur radio. They do
Yeah.
a lot of publications of things, books and things like that. They're just now starting to do a little
Mhm.
bit of YouTube. They really need to get out there
Yeah.
and do a little bit more. But I tell you, there's quite honestly, there's a lot of really good resources on YouTube to be able to learn about ham radio and things like that.
Yes.
But what I do find lacking is that a lot of times you don't know. Okay, are they pumping this because they're getting a sponsorship or something like that? So
Mhm.
I'm always going to try to be real with people. I really want to start developing some more articles based around. I kind of borrowed the concept, so but the hints and kinks of the 891, the Yaesu 891. That's one of the
Yeah.
articles,
Yeah.
and a lot of people click on that too. But the hints and kinks, that's
Mhm.
a
Interesting.
periodical that the ARL puts out. But I thought that was a good way to
Mhm.
run at it. But I want to put out there,
Yeah.
hey, the thing about radios is that not one is going to meet for all your needs. So it really, a lot of people come and ask me, hey, what's the best radio? I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, well, I'm
Depends.
I'm a I'm a yes. It depends. That's the best answer you can give. Is it depends,
Mhm.
because it really is a requirements gathering exercise and figuring out. Okay, even if you
Mhm.
do have question marks, usually the problem with question marks is that they equal dollar signs. So the more
Right.
questions that you can't answer, the more you're going to have to supplement that with income. So
Yeah.
it's but trying to get the right thing in people's hands is a difficult thing, and I do have something kind of on the back burner that I'm trying to work on with for that. But some of
Mhm.
these articles should go toward that as well.
Well, good. Yeah, and I'll be sure to put a link to your website in the description of this episode, so if anyone's interested, they can go and look at it.
All right, sounds great.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is another question. You've been president for around 4 years now. What goals do you have for the future of the club?
Um, well, like like I said before, the short term really was to get club owned equipment.
Right. Right.
Now I want to start training these people and getting
Mm-hmm.
them to be able to use the equipment because so many times it's really easy. So hey, you get into something, let's say I don't know, remote control cars and things like that. Oh, hey, I want this remote and all that stuff. Never mind the fact that somebody doesn't
Yeah.
know how to drive it. So your wet skills is what I like to say is your brain and also being able to manipulate things with your hands and understand concepts. Without those concepts, you're not going to be able to run the car or fly that plane or that drone or anything like that. So it's going to take some skills. You can't supplement skills all the time with just money and buying stuff. So what I'm trying to do is uh, get get people to our events or get them interested in things such as let's say contesting because people may not know that, but in ham radio, there's concept of using contests, and that's where you're basically using your equipment, knowledge, and skills in real world conditions while trying to communicate information efficiently and effectively. So
Mm-hmm.
you're one guy. And you're tuning across the radio, listening for somebody else, and you hear them, you say your call sign, they say their call sign back and give you a signal report and maybe a small other bit of information. And that doesn't sound very hard. However, to do
Mm-hmm.
that efficiently and to do it with a lot of people and making a lot of contacts in physically separate places like Europe, all the different stations in
Yeah.
Europe and things like that, that takes some real skills, and you can't supplement uh, a radio or purchasing equipment to be able to make your skills better. So you have to get those skills up. So those contests are a test of your equipment, your knowledge, and your skills to be able to communicate. So I love that is something that we can do as a club. We can help people with that,
Mm-hmm.
especially
Yep.
the growth that I've seen in ham radio seems to be people are interested because of emergency communications. And basically
Mm-hmm.
when stuff hits the fan, cell phones out, and you need to contact your loved ones or help a community whose infrastructure is gone. Um, maybe a flood or hurricane, whatever. Um,
Mm-hmm.
in a community, something like that, they need to know how many hospital beds are available in the next county or whether or not somebody needs assistance and things like that. Those are kinds of things that amateur radio can really help with, but you can't do that without training. You can have the equipment, but do you
Right.
know how to put it up? Do you know what frequencies to be on?
Mm-hmm.
Or even how to correctly and efficiently relay information? We have systems in place to be able to do this kind of thing. And I always try to tell people you're not going to rise to the occasion in that kind of scenario. Just by buying a radio and putting it in the closet for the day the balloon goes up, it's you're going to have a rude awakening. It is not going to be well. It's not going to be done. You can only do as well as your best day of practice. So that's why I really try
Right.
to push that
Yeah.
skills development, especially through things like field day. That's kind of a
Mm.
fun
Yeah.
activity, but it's still
Definitely.
kind of a contest. And we that's a great time, especially for HF gear, to get people out and show them how to set it all up.
So let's talk about different activities. There are a lot of different things to do in amateur radio, like Morse code, parks on the air, or summits on the air. What are some of your favorite ones to do
Oh
besides field
gosh,
day, like you mentioned?
yeah. Well, so there's so many facets of this hobby, and that's what I say. It's
Right.
hobbies within a hobby. There's so much stuff to do, and I think I've told you before that if somebody says they're bored in this hobby, they are not looking because there's so much to do. But
Yeah. No.
yeah, but I'd probably have to say it's whatever I'm currently researching and learning on or developing skills in.
Mhm.
So right now, I'm kind of doing a concentrated effort on constructing a 2 meter and 70 centimeter rotatable antenna array, and I'm using it for satellite communication and possibly EME. For anybody that doesn't know, that's the Earth, Moon,
Really?
Earth. So you're
Yeah.
bouncing your signal literally off the moon to talk to somebody in, say, Germany. So
Yeah,
that
it's
it
pretty
is
cool.
possible, but it's mind-boggling that works. But and like I said,
Yeah.
I do love contests. There's all kinds of single sideband phone contests that I try to get into. And I'm also trying to get into RTTY. That's the radio teletype. So
Oh yeah.
that's the so as after CW came around, then they needed to have a different way of sending text, and the way they would do it was through radio teletype, and these different tones would generate commands to printer apparatuses that would actually type out the whatever the message was. And those used to be really big machines, and they were real loud and stuff. But now everything's done with a computer that it can decipher it. And those contests are like maybe 30 minutes in duration, but it's like really fast paced, and it's really neat that these people are doing this. So that's kind of captured my eye right now. Um,
Yeah.
but the other aspect of it, honestly, I really love to teach things, and there's just something about being able to relate technical information to somebody in a way that it's approachable and meaningful to them, and just seeing their eyes light up when they finally get it. Like I guess one of the things that that we're taught as we're coming up in the skill set of amateur radio and getting our licenses is you have to cut your antenna. So say you're broadcasting, you're using an antenna for both receive and transmit. Well, in order to transmit on that antenna, you have to have it at a certain physical length, and it has to do with the speed of light and the speed of the electrons actually flowing in that wire. Well, the reason that you have to have it at those certain lengths is because of it physically has to do with the signal. So like when we talk about a 2 meter signal, the reason it's 2 meters is because it's literally 2 meters for one full wavelength. So I try to tell people that it's kind of puzzling. At first you're like, okay, well I kind of got it. I see
You're right.
what you're
Yeah.
doing, but then when you say, okay, so you sit them down and say, have you ever played a guitar? Well, who hasn't played around with a guitar? And I'm like, okay, so if you have that top string and you don't do anything with it and you strum it, you hear one single tone, right? You hear one note that comes out of it. If you want to change that note, what do? Well, you shorten the string by pressing down on the string to make it a shorter length that's resonating. Oh, okay. Well, I get it now. So, it's a different, so it's
Right.
exactly the same concept. You have a different frequency. So that antenna needs to be longer or shorter depending on what frequency you want to resonate at. So those are the kinds of things that, you don't find that kind of stuff in books very much, or people explain things very well. But
Right.
when you can relate with somebody on a one-to-one scale, especially in ham radio, we call it Elmering. So to have an Elmer is to have somebody that will show you how to do different things. And Elmering someone is really useful because you don't have to use a single approach to teach 20 different people. You can actually find out about that person, what's relatable to them, and figure out, oh, you know what? They would probably get this concept if I approach it this way. So
Yeah.
I think we miss a lot of that. And when we have clubs, we can start to have that more personal approach.
Say a listener of this podcast is interested in getting licensed. How do they go about getting their license, their ticket, as they call it?
Right. And yeah, it's exactly right, because we call it a ticket to learn, because just because you have a license doesn't mean you know anything. All it means is that you
No.
pass the test.
No.
And
Yeah.
I mean, anybody that's been in it for more than 30 minutes has figured that out. But the yeah, so the way the tests are set up, there's three different levels for in the United States. So you've got technician, general, and extra, and those are the three classes, if you will. So Starting off with a technician, I believe there's 300 some odd questions. There's already a pool of questions and answers available for you to look at. There's multiple places online. I would start with arrl.org. That's a really good place to start with. And there's also, I believe there's some free resources on QRZ. It's QRZ.com. And if you go look for phone apps and things like that, really just go find the practice tests. They're free all over the place, and start taking those, and you'll see that the concepts. And let's say that you can't figure out an answer or something like that. There's either books that you can find that are based on whatever test level that you're wanting to do, or look on YouTube for that exact question.
Yeah.
And more than likely, you'll find at least two different resources. One is, I think, Josh Naz with
K6NAZ.
Yes. What's his? I'm trying to remember his
Ham Radio
podcast.
Crash Course.
Yes, Ham Radio Crash Course. And then the other guy, the Oz, Zero OZ. Oh gosh, I can't remember his name now. I should have wrote some down ahead of time, but
Okay.
you can usually just look for that, and you can find people that actually know the answers to the questions and know the whole reason why behind it. But here's the secret. Don't worry about that yet. Just learn the question and the answer and be done with it. Figure out whatever kind of thing you could do. Because like I had one question that I had absolutely no idea what they were trying to describe. But it just so happened that the answer, and this is for the extras, the answer had my old unit from the Army's number in it. And that's
really?
the only way that I remembered that answer. So it had a 416 in there, and I was like, oh, and it was on the test. So pass that one just because of that reference I made. But do whatever works for you. You know, I studied, quite honestly, it was a lot of bathroom time with me on the phone and just going through with an app. And so after you do that, you feel like if you can get around 80%, normally if you take practice tests and you get around 80%, then go look on the ARRL or our website if you're here local, and you can find where there are what we call VE test sessions. That's where amateur radio operators are volunteering to give the tests to people. Then you'll just go in, sit down, take the test, and it is so the FCC wants $35, I believe it is right now, in order to essentially set up you an account. And that gives you an FCC ID number that you have to take in with you to the test. Once you take the test, and the test takers, depends on who it is. Some of them will charge you like $15. A lot of them are free now. But you take the test. If you pass it, either that day or a few days down the road, you'll get your call sign in the mail, and you'll be able to get on the air.
Yeah.
So it's really neat that us in the hobby are the ones that the FCC has said, yes, you can go and give the tests to be able to make more ham radio operators. So go
it
forth and
always
multiply.
been that way.
No, it hasn't. Yeah, it used to be.
The FCC actually used to give the test themselves.
Oh yeah,
with Morse code requirements.
Oh yeah, and can you imagine? You have to go to some city block with in some nondescript building with a G-man sitting in front of you trying to give you the test. I would be nervous as all get out.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm happy that we don't have Morse code anymore. You didn't. It wasn't a requirement when you got yours, and it wasn't.
No, it was not.
And that we can do it locally now. We don't have to go to Richmond or Detroit or New York City to go take the test.
Right, and it's I tell you, quite honestly, that was another deciding factor for me to go ahead and take it, because I was like, what? They don't have that requirement anymore? Okay, and then I ordered that bow thing, but. Right. That was definitely something that a reason for me to get it. And now I'm wanting to get into CW, so into Morse code, because
Hmm.
it's a
Me
very
too.
elegant mode. And from what I'm seeing is there's a lot more CW operators now than there ever was. So
Yeah.
I think it's actually helped out.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I agree. That's something I want to get into as well. There's a really good podcast that I've been listening to called dit.fm, and
Oh
dit
yeah,
dit spelled out DITDIE. Yeah, it's really
yeah.
good. I've been listening to it recently, and it's all about Morse code and the different activities you can do, like summits on the air and parts on the air. So that's something that I like to get into. And I think a couple local hams are going to get together and do a weekly CW SlowNet. So if we get that together, I'll be sure to send you an email with the details, and you can hop in. It'll probably be on 20 meters.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Love to get on in on that.
Hmm.
I've got, like a lot of hams, I've got a collection of all kinds of different things. One of them are
Yeah.
keyers now for Morse code. I just
Hmm.
need to have the skill set to use it. Once again, doesn't matter how expensive I buy one.
Yeah.
It's the wet skills that I need to be able to operate it.
What do you see the future of ham radio looking like? Do you think it'll move all towards digital? Will it stay on single sideband? Do you think we'll get newer protocols that don't exist yet? Do you think it'll just all move to Morse code?
Um, well, so I tell you, it it seems like, and maybe this is just kind of showing my age, but the more things change, the more they stay the same. So really,
Mm.
all we have are a few different ways of manipulating the frequencies to do what we need. Uh, be that CW, be that RTTY or single sideband or any digital mode, it's all still just the same manipulation of the frequencies. So it just depends on your equipment that you have to be able to do the modulation of that frequency to be able to get whatever kind of information you want out. I think that we have digital modes like FT8, which is
Mm.
very it works very well for signal to noise ratio. For people that don't know, it's basically how well can you hear something and distinguish it through
Mhm.
noise. So if you are talking through a fan to somebody, it's the difference between your what you're putting out versus the fan noise. So FT8 and things like that are really coming to the forefront, especially well, especially in the last few years. Now we're coming up on a solar maximum where signals propagate much better
Mhm.
around the world. But before that, the FT8 and things, they were really taken on because our signals just weren't getting around the world very well because the lack of sunspots makes it so that our bouncing reflections off of the Earth's atmosphere isn't working to our advantage. So those
Right.
FT8 modes and things like that were really, really helpful. So
Yeah.
I see that kind of coming along, and I'd like to see more growth there.
Mhm.
But it does kind of, it feels like it pulls away people's, I guess, the personality from the ham radio communication, which a lot of people like to do. Some people just love to get on there
Yeah.
and rag chew. But I, you know,
Mhm.
I think especially um, now as hams are love technology typically. They're the first ones to try to use stuff. They're the ones that are wanting to use technology and manipulate it to work for different kinds of communication. So I really think that we're going to see a lot more digital modes. We're going to start seeing probably smarter radios that will kind of figure things out for you,
Yeah.
so that say you're trying to make a contact with somebody in Italy. It will try to figure
Mhm.
out what the propagation's doing, what frequency would work best, and what
Mhm.
modes that are capable for you to make a reliable communication between you in the U.S. And say West Virginia with somebody in uh, you know in Italy somewhere. So I think the radios are going to get a little bit smarter with that. They may even start doing things like caching messages, especially if it's digital. You can cache that
Yeah.
information and be able to pass it either through, store and forward kind of repeating from satellites, or different nodes and things like that um, that will kind of well, like an like mesh network type things. I can see that kind of
Right.
happening.
Yeah.
There's
Mesh
always going to
tester
be a
kind of.
pushback, that well, that's not real ham radio. But hey, get out of the way, or just get on with it. Quit trying to
Yeah.
uh, compartmentalize this into something that you feel like it should be ham radio. You should be open minded enough to understand that it's not. It's a hobby of learning, and we need to learn things and not be stagnant. Um, so
Yeah.
I welcome that kind of thing. I think I really I tell you what I would like to see ham radio do is, yeah, I want it to become more relevant to society.
Mm.
It's kind of funny. We've seen, for lack of, this is a term of endearment for me. So we've seen the nerds of the '80s. Now they're the stars of the current times. We're all based around technology and things like that. Back then,
Right.
they were the ones getting the sand kicked in their face and all that stuff. Now they're the good guys. So
Mm. Right.
there's, uh, there's how things are actually built, the signals that go along wires and stuff like that, and the connections that uh, move through nothing but the air. We need people that are figuring out how to actually make use of this stuff. We have a lot of people that are embracing technology, but they really only understand on the surface. How many people have smartphones? They're all like, "Yeah, I'm all about technology." I'm like, "Well, how does that signal send that information that you're wanting to send? You don't know."
Right.
So I think we're going to have a big lack of understanding of how these things work. But amateur radio can really foster that those with that kind of inquisitive thought and the people who want to know how things work. And I've always been one. I like science and technology, but schoolwork never showed us practical applications. Uh,
Right.
but
Yeah.
but to me, it's a no brainer that ham radio can be one of it could be such an advantage of incorporating um, those concepts of
Mhm.
you know scientific and technology things along with communications. We should be integrated with those classes to show kids, okay, here's the concept we're learning, here's an actual way to make it work. And that could be everything from building things to constructing new ways of communicating. So I really wish that they would incorporate not just the concepts into schools, and not just grade schools, high schools, but colleges as well. They really need to. People come out with an electronics degree and never touch a soldering iron. It's beyond my wildest dreams that someone doesn't know which end to hold on a soldering iron for. But they'll have a master's in some kind of electronics. So, but I do think that I would like to see it go that way, to be a
Yeah.
supplement for those kinds of fields.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. I like to see it expanded more, and I've learned a lot in the 6-ish months I've been licensed. So it's a great hobby for sure. Yeah.
It's
I have one
fun.
last question. What advice would you give to someone who just got their license and they're scared to get on the air?
Uh, Everybody's scared. Just get over it.
Mm.
It's
Get over
it's it, everybody has mic fright when they first start out.
it.
You're going to make mistakes, and I think and this is probably my viewpoint. Another thing from being a older guy is that we watch YouTube and we see all these successes. We never see the failures, and
Mhm.
life is not a series of successes. It's a series of many and many failures to build that success. So you have to reach out. You have to get out of your comfort zone a bit. Don't be afraid. And you know if you're afraid somebody's going to come down on you, if they do come down on you, it's because they're idiots. And, and
Yeah.
they're just and give me a call and I will straighten them out. But it's most of the time, especially on repeaters, that's usually where the first thing is. Somebody will check into a net. Those are the easiest things because you don't have to say a lot. You can just check in and be done with it. But don't be afraid to get on there. You're going to do some things wrong. Everybody does. Um, it's just it's one of the things you really have to find where your comfort zone is and push it on. And if the other thing is, I always tell people, especially on the HF side, stop stop trying to figure everything out. Just put a wire in the air and go for it. Uh,
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah. Go
we'll
for it.
have paralysis through analysis when we're trying to get all this equipment stuff learned, and we're so worried we're going to get the wrong thing. Just go simple,
Hmm.
get something up in the air, get on the air, and have fun with it. You're missing out. Um, it but yeah, get on the air early and often. Don't be afraid to goof
Hmm.
up. You will. Um,
Yeah.
just understand it's a part of the learning process.
Where can people find more information about you and your club?
If anybody wants to check us out, it's
Hmm.
N4NRV. That's November 4, November Romeo Victoria, and that's
Oh,
.org.
important.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes
Hmm.
I always I like to throw that one in there, but so N4NRV.org. And if you do the
Hmm.
contact us there, that actually comes to me right now.
Oh,
And
awesome.
if anybody wants to have any questions about that, feel free to use that, and I'll be happy to get back to you. I love helping people out, and I
Mhm.
love sharing a hobby.
Thank you, Mr. Coble. It's been an honor. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I hope that a lot of our listeners will get into the hobby.
All right, thanks, Ethan. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you.